I know we said don't ghost us on last week's episode of Bewitched Banter's Haunted Places episode. This week, Amy and I are going to respectfully ask you not to ghost us for real. We recorded these bad boys months and months ago. This is when we were babies and newbies to podcasting. So really appreciate you guys listening. And this audio, just heads up, may not be the best quality, but the stories are on point and we got some great conversation between the two of us. Banter as always that you can expect. Please stay tuned and thanks again for listening.
The cards don't lie. I see some F-bombs coming in this episode of Bewitched Banter. You have been warned. Content is not suitable for all listeners. Welcome! You're listening to Bewitched Banter.
I'm Krista, and I believe that people are inherently shitty.
And I'm Amy, and I tend to believe that people are naturally good.
But ironically, I'm a super believer in the supernatural and all things spiritual.
And I'm a total skeptic.
We're best friends, and in this podcast, we're seeking to explore and understand each other's perspectives with deep dives into the spooky, the spiritual, the magical, and the mystical.
And what I would like to call some straight up spooks.
Today, we'll be covering tarot cards.
Woo!
Cheers to that.
This is like Krista's subject, by the way.
I was gonna say, so I'm a subject matter expert on this, and later we'll be having a little surprise involving Amy and tarot.
Nuh-uh, you're gonna read them to me?
I might.
Okay.
I might just.
I'm excited.
As you can see, for the viewers, or for the listeners rather, I have a set of cards that's show and tell today and a book on how to read them, which I'll cover later in my case. But anywho, it's going to be a nice little show and tell day. So cheers to that. And what do you say? Let's get spiritual.
Fuck that. Let's get cynical. So before we even dive into, I know you're going to do the history, but I think you should tell our viewers a little bit about, your journey with your tarot cards. Why this subject means so much to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. I have that. I was going to share a little anecdote that happened to me when I was about 16 or 17 years old. And as you know, for me, I've been personally interested in tarot and practicing it myself for others more seriously for about the last year or so. But getting my actual cards read is not new to me. As I said, I have had them read when I was 16 or 17 years old.
So your parents would take you?
No, I would take myself, or my sister would take me, or...
So is your sister into spooky spiritual stuff too?
I think she wants to be, but as you know, she's a doctor, so she has to be very scientific minded, but I think she believes. I know she has it in her spirit to believe, but it scares her because her mind is so rational that it doesn't equate with her analytical brain.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
No, I definitely can see that.
So the quick anecdote that I do have before I dive into the history, which is quite lengthy, so bear with us, guys. It's a wild ride of tarot. When I was in high school, I was going into writing. I always was interested in communications writing, and I actually was up for some type of writing scholarship. And one of the reviewers, scholarship committee folks, she actually invited me over to her house, which was in my hometown in Connecticut. And she invited me over for this really beautiful, lavish dinner. And it turns out I did not get the scholarship. So I think she kind of felt bad for me. To be honest with you, I think she felt bad for me.
Well, I'm sure it's a lot of pressure to pick one person.
Yeah, and honestly, I think at that time I was just so non-confident as the thread through my adult life has been. But we're working on that. That she just felt bad for me, like you said. So she had this dinner.
Like a pity, feel bad?
I don't know, because she
or it's I want to nurture you.
It was, to me, that's the sense I got. So we had this dinner. It was really tasty. And she ended up, through the conversation, which was also a very wonderful conversation, she said, by the way, I'm a witch. And I was like, at first I was terrified. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I would, even today, I think if someone told me that, I would be weirded out.
She, though, through this experience made me not be weirded out by any of this. And it's kind of part of a stem of why I'm so interested in it now. And so she ended up reading my cards, and I was, again, 16, 17 years old, ready to go off to ASU, Arizona State, going cross country, 2,500 miles practically away from home for the first time at just 17 years old. And I was obviously terrified. It was a huge risk and a big life change. But she read my cards and she foresaw some things that would happen. And it was actually regarding 2 of my roommates. And she basically said, one of them, you're going to have a problem with one of them, but don't worry, the other 2 are going to have your back. And sure enough, something did happen where one of them became so obsessed with her boyfriend and she moved out. She left us high and dry. So it was just me, my friend Stephanie, who we met, my other friend Brittany, and we were left just like, what the hell are we going to do? And so she just caused a lot of drama, this one chick. And then
I could probably predict that too, though. There's going to be one bad apple in a group of roommates. Of course.
But then there's other specifics that she got into. And it was really creepy. So as I said, I was really a little terrified. This woman's inviting me over to her house alone. My mom did drop me off.
Oh, just the 2 of you?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask if there's other girls there who were like freaked out by her.
No, but it was just me. And so later in the reading, what came up was that your mom had a miscarriage between you and your sister. It was a boy. So you have a brother and he's always around you. He's always protecting you. And he comes in the form, and I'm going to screw the name up, of, I think I'll have to look it up to be honest with you, but a King James flower. These flowers, she said, grow in the shade. Lo and behold, I get home. It's like, so I'm like, oh, fuck, this is weird.
Did you believe her, or do you think she's bullshit?
No, I did. And I didn't know at that point my mom did have a miscarriage. Turns out that was true.
But also, I know this is the cynic in me. What's like the statistic? Like how many women do have a miscarriage?
Oh, that's where we need my sister to hop in, but it is high. It's a very high percentage.
A lot of more people have it than we realize.
No, absolutely.
Me being a cynic, you know.
No, that's your duty. You're doing your due diligence. But no, it was just really creepy. So it came in the form of this flower. So I drive home. It's 8-9 o'clock at night. And actually, you know what? I did drive myself. Side note, because I remember pulling up to the driveway and I was terrified because the light wasn't going on, like the floodlight that normally goes on in my parents' old house in the garage did not go on. And then I parked. I'm like terrified. I'm looking. I'm like, holy shit, there's these plants that do grow under the shade, under these steps that was the way into the back of the house, the way everyone entered our home growing up. And I remember asking my mom about what kind of flowers those were, and she told me exactly what it was. And again, I don't recall the exact name, but I think it was called King James. And they're pretty, like greens. They almost look like, almost like herbs, but they're not. They're just pretty green plants.
So she had never been to your house that you know of?
That I know of. Correct. That's where we get into. You're absolutely right. She might have done a fucking hot reading on my ass. She probably did. Now that you say that. But anyway, from that day forward, I became very invested personally and spiritually in any form of metaphysical practices, and hence enter why I continue to get my cards read in the future up in Sedona, in my hometown.
Or Desert Ridge.
Oh, God. We're not going to tell that story because that bitch sucked.
But going back to the story, I do have a question.
Sure.
So how was the conversation? So she gave you this information, but you never knew this. So obviously you had to confirm this with your mom. Mm-hmm. How was that conversation?
I think my mom was like a little bit freaked out. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I think being an adult, to you it was bizarre, but to me, like, imagine your kid comes home and is like, this grown woman is telling me you had a miscarriage. Wouldn't you be a little creeped out?
Yeah, I think she was, but I also believe that my mom, and I think we've discussed this a little bit in the past, I think there's something in my mom's family on the matriarchal side. My aunt, me, my sister, my cousin, I think have some type of something. I'm not going to call it ESP. I'm not going to say we're psychics, but we have some type of intuitive gift. I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you, it's there. And it's here and here. I feel it. And anyway.
Do you have like a story or just a feeling?
Yeah, no, I've had premonitions before of things that actually happened, like really scary shit. Like I was in a boat accident with Allie's family and my family, and this crazy ass motorboat that was drunk hit my dad's sailboat, and I fell face first into the ground. My mom's ribs were broke, and we got literally lifted on stretchers like by the Coast Guard.
What? Yeah, that's crazy.
It was really fucking scary. But the scarier part to me, and I had this written down, documented in my journal when this happened, it's my dad's 50th birthday. So we were out to celebrate that on the lake in our hometown, and me, my sister, Allie, and her sister were all below deck, just chit-chatting, having a good time. The girls were at Michigan at the time. Allie and my sister, as you know, went there, and me and Allie were just ready to go to college, and we were talking, and I blacked out, and I had the vision. Like the precognition that I talked about in episode 1. I had that. And there's been multiple other things in life where that has happened to me, but that was the biggest like traumatic event that I saw it. And then right after like the vision ended, I hear Allie's dad screaming, "Watch out!" And it was exactly what I had just seen. And then boom, my face is on the floor of the boat.
Damn, that's intense.
Yeah. So anywho, that was a really long intro, but yes, obviously I believe that's why we're here. I'm the believer, and tarot being one of the many things that I practice now and believe in. So let me get into that history if you're all ready. For those of you who don't know, tarot is the practice of divination, or fortune telling using cards with beautiful images on them. Also some numbers. Most of the images are archetypal or universally human. Common examples of archetypes in the tarot are the Empress, Death, the Hanged Man, the Chariot, and Judgment. Judgment Day. Are you ready?
Yes.
Going to heaven or you going to hell? You don't believe in either, do you?
I mean, if I take my bets, I'd definitely be in heaven.
You fucking would say that. But so contrary to what it may sound like, hangman and death actually don't mean those things. It doesn't mean death immediate and impending. They actually more reference the death of the old person or old soul, like more so a rebirth, a transformation of oneself.
So you're scary born again Christians?
No way. That's the belief they believe, but the imagery is what I'm saying. Like,
no, I understand. It's like not that you're dying, but it's like you're being reborn.
Right, exactly. And I guess that could be a scary belief for an upcoming episode.
Yeah, we should do that.
Because that shit is no joke.
Those people are intense.
They're so judgy. I can't even talk about Judgment Day. Jesus Christ. Ooh, no pun intended. Hi, Jesus. But okay. So for references, I got most of my information today from 3 sources. A collectorsweekly.com article called Tarot Mythology, The Surprising Origins of the World's Most Misunderstood Cards by Hunter Oatman Stanford. A Rolling Stone article that was actually just published in December 2020 by Danielle Directo Messon called Not Just Woo Woo, Why More People Are Turning to Tarot for Self-Help, i.e. moi, and many others. And finally, a tarotheritage.com blog by Cheryl E. Smith, and of course Wikipedia. So a lot of sources, but they make for a really good history that I've got coming for you. So
no one's name, like the author's name was like Moonshine?
No, these were legit. The tarotheritage.com, Cheryl E. Smith might be a little hip dip. The Rolling Stone was beautifully well done as always. So anywho, actual journalism is what I'm trying to say. So did you know that tarot reading actually has a formal name?
No, what is it?
I didn't either, but I'm kind of fucking glad I do know since I'm learning to practice it myself. I feel like something I should have known, right? This is from Wikipedia. This is tarot's formal name, cartomancy.
Cartomancy?
Cartomancy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fortune telling or divinization using a deck of cards. Forms of cartomancy appeared soon after playing cards were first introduced into Europe in the 14th century. Practitioners of cartomancy are generally known as cartomancers, card readers, or simply readers. Today, cartomancy is often connected with psychics and Satanism. That said, not all tarot readers claim to have a third eye, nor is it rooted in evil from the Rolling Stone article.
Third eye meaning they have like a different sixth sense.
Correct. Yep. So third eye is the space in traditional chakra healing, the space right between your forehead and the middle of your eyes. And that represents a sixth sense, like you were saying.
Okay.
Or insight into the divine. All right. So the skeptic in you will not be surprised to learn that tarot's roots had nothing at all to do with fortune telling.
I'm not surprised.
It actually began as a parlor card game in northern Italy, similar to what we know today as the game of bridge. It was played mostly by rich aristocrats and royalty in their lavish parlors and palaces for entertaining.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah, so basically they're just trying to like fucking peacock on each other. Like, yo, I'm rich. I'm going to get these artists to like really expensive artists to do my cards just to entertain you. but cool.
Wow, imagine if like solitaire one day became like something that was spiritual.
That'd be so fucking cool. I used to play solitaire with my grandmother, and I have a little segment about my gram in this coming up later. So, hey, Willa, what's up? Before tarot made its way into Europe, though, it is presumed that playing cards to tell one's fortune dates even further back than the 1400s. This is a quote from the tarotheritage.com blog. Quote, the Chinese invention of games played with little strips of bamboo that you hold in your hands, and it made its way down the Silk Road through Persia, India, and the Arab world. Along the way, bamboo was replaced with papyrus and paper, so therefore the cards could be round, square, or rectangle, and the number of suits in a deck varied. By the 1300s, however, card playing had reached the Mamluk Sultanate. Forgive me out there.
Say what?
Basically a county or a region in Egypt.
Okay.
Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt. I don't know. Forgive me. It reached Egypt, and it took on the familiar form of 4 suits, numbered ace through 10, and 3 or 4 court cards, or king, queen, jack. What's the other one? Joker. So Arab traders and settlers introduced their card games to ports in Italy and Spain around 1370. In less than a decade, cards had proliferated throughout Europe. Playing cards exploded onto the scene as the familiar 52 card deck we still use today.
But what a traditional game. There's nothing you can beat. Then, like, there's no game you can really compare to a deck of cards.
No, nothing. Anytime, any place. Like transportable, like
there's so many games you can make from the deck of cards. Mm-hmm. There's no other game like it, really.
I mean,
it's kind of genius.
It really is. I mean, shit, they had nothing else to do though, right? So like
I know, but the fact that someone could come up with that, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they had Netflix and God knows that countless instant gratification shit we have now. Like so you're right. TikTok. Oh God, girl, I'm going to talk about that later. Still. Anyway, I don't condone her TikTok use, but I will condone it for this podcast, of which you can have full ownership of. Thanks.
They do have spiritual.
You can just send those to me. How about that?
I'm not on that channel.
Well, you get on it, girl. Get on it. Great point, though. So speaking of the endless amount of games you can play, think of all the drunk nights we had playing golf using kings as the lowest face card. And hell, even back to our college days where King's Cup, was where you each suit, each number card had an assigned value or action. The cards as we know them today, with the 4 suits of clubs, diamonds, hearts, and spades, all stemmed all the way back to the Silk Road and this Mamluk Senate in Egypt from 1250 to 1517. So it's old.
Very cool.
To your point. Back to Europe right quick, and how the cards got their narrative / storytelling / fortune telling qualities. Italian aristocrats showed off their wealth and interest in a card game by commissioning artists to handcraft very expensive cards called Carte da Trionfi, or Cards of Triumph. The game obviously included scoring, and in Italian, the scorekeeping for the Cards of Triumph game was also called Torocini, or plural for tarocchino.
Did you just say fettuccine?
Fettuccine Alfredo. I'm hungry again.
That's up my alley. Get me some fettuccine.
Oh, hell yeah. Fuck, I'm hungry, girl. I can't eat that shit right now.
You're triggered because I said pasta?
Triggered. Oh my God, so triggered. But tarocchini was the way that the Cards of Triumph game was scored. That was how they said it. So later, when the cards moved to France, French writers, who we'll get into just shortly, shortened tarocchini to tarot.
Okay, I'm following.
Okay. So while I know you don't wholly believe in cards for fortune telling, the artist in you would also so appreciate the beauty of and craftsmanship that went into these early designs. The earliest were on wooden blocks and hand carved on
that's amazing.
And hand painted, right?
That's amazing.
They're stunning. I'm going to show you some in just a second. And they were hand carved on wood until papyrus came around.
And you can find that on our Instagram account. We'll shout it out at the end.
Bewitched Banter. Wink. The oldest surviving, here's some photos, Ames, for you coming up. The oldest surviving tarot cards are the 15 or so Visconti Sforza tarot decks painted in the mid 15th century.
They're beautiful.
Aren't they stunning?
It's like a radial design. It's really cool.
And with I don't know, it looks like Arabic font on the top. I don't know if that's what it is or really not, cool. But just gorgeous. And they were made for rulers in Duce, Milan.
I like the black and white better because to me it looks more pop. Like more rustic.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous. The one on the left is exactly what they found, the artifact, black and white, of course, because it was on a wood plank. Now, the one on the right, the artist took it upon themselves to do a rendering of what that card probably would have looked like if they had access to Photoshop and all of our creative modern digital tools.
The handmade nitty gritty. It's not perfect. So much better.
So much better, right? Like, look how gorgeous that is. I have one more photo for you. Hold on, let me see. Here are some more examples for you in the earlier decks.
No, they're all beautiful.
These, I think, are, not old, but old style. These clearly like had a printing press. Here's some oldies.
Oh, wow, I love them.
2 hand-painted Mamluk from the Egypt cards in Turkey, and 2 cards from Italy. So Egypt, this is how they transformed. So very like kaleidoscopy on the left from Turkey. And then to the right, there's 2 that are like, of course, Catholic.
Well, it reminds me of a stained glass window.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for, from Italy.
And the fact that they could do that where it's so small and so intricate is very impressive.
Stunning, right? And both of those decks that you're looking at came from the 15th century. And you can also peep these on our Insta later. All right, let me get back in it. As the game continued to take off in Italy and Europe, imagery then became paramount to the card game as a whole, and the decks featured narratives, mostly, as I just showed you, in Christian symbolism, with priests and monks and people praying, and that's because that was their worldview, right? That's what they knew and the practice, and were basically force-fed to believe. But anywho.
That's probably all they knew. Like, as far as being religious, they probably weren't exposed to other religions at that time.
Yeah, and if they were, it was probably evil, right?
Yeah, evil, or you're batshit cray.
Exactly. So this is a really interesting quote from a fellow artist.
We're not BFFs.
A fellow artist and graphic designer, Bill Wolf, who actually studies design in the aspect of tarot, which I think is so fucking cool. Like,
what a weird random thing to get into.
Well, he was just a graphic designer, and I think through his studies, he somehow, found the art work.
It's like the HGTV show where they're like, what do you and your wife do? And they're like, I create the name of like crayons. Like,
oh my God, I want to do that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, that's, if he was on HGTV and he said like, I studied the design of tarot cards, people would be like, what the fuck?
No, he needs to go on like paranormal TV.
I know, but those people's jobs on that show are just so obscure. Absurdly
cool and obscure. But anywho, so this is a quote from him from the collectors.com blog. Quote, "The meaning of the imagery was parallel to the mechanics of the play of the game. So the random draw of the cards created a new and unique narrative each and every time the game was played. And the decisions the players made influenced the unfolding of that narrative. This narrative element gives readers something to latch on to. Wink, wink, tarot readers. In that, it is relatively intuitive to look at a combination of cards and derive your own story from them."
Well, yes. It's like the famous, a picture has 1,000 words.
100%. And so because you could intuit your own quote unquote life from the symbols and the imagery on the cards, the game evolved into a choose your own adventure style game like Magic or Dungeons and Dragons, like my cousins play, which I used to make fun of, but honestly, it's like it's a subculture. Like, it's a cult. We could cover that someday too. That's a cult. But it's actually kind of cool. And there's a lot of intricacies to D&D. Now, something we can relate to better of what early tarot was like was the game of MASH. Remember that shit in middle school?
MASH! Mansion, apartment, shack, house.
So that's what it really became.
I always put Freddie Prinze Jr. as my
baby.
husband.
I used to have that poster. Boricua. Anyway, I have a type, for those of you who don't know. Anyway, anyone out there? Wink, wink. I'm single, ready to mingle. Come at me. Slide into my DMs. You're welcome. At Krista Alejandra 1005.
Is this like your ad for your...
It's my own personal fucking ad in Craigslist.
You're like, the whole reason I started this podcast wasn't because I'm into this stuff. It's because I want to get laid.
I definitely need to get laid. Anywho. And folks, you're going to find I am not shy. I talk about sex, so deal with it. Just so you know, as you get to know us, not shy at all. So back to business. When the game hit France, however, that's when it really turned into the belief of divination versus just play, like MASH. This is all thanks to a French writer named Antoine Court de Guérin. Don't speak French. That was a Spanish accent. Don't at me. He claimed that tarot came directly from Egypt, when in fact, as we just learned, it was really Asia and the Silk Road, not from Egypt or the Middle East, where tarot derived. But Gebelin was convinced that tarot's origins were Egypt. He would not back down. So much so, he wrote...
Fake news!
Fake news! It kind of fucking is a really early example of fake news, man. Yeah. Anyway, Gebelin went on to write a 9-volume history of the world that was highly influential later in the 18th century and in the interpretation of tarot as a magical and mystical activity. By this time, many European intellectuals saw ancient Egyptians' writings and religions as holding major insights into the human existence. This then gave the cards the greater quote-unquote credibility because all these intellectuals held up Egyptians' religious beliefs. Does that make sense? Like... like architects, archaeologists and scholars really at this time started delving into Egyptian history and folklore and mysticism. And because of that connection to tarot, the cards got more credibility as fortune-telling tools versus just a game of MASH.
Okay, I'm following.
Got it. So Gebelin's assertions of the, quote, Holy Grail were also taken by another writer, Etlieta. Anyway, he claimed that the signs and symbols not only came from Egypt, but more specifically from the ancient Book of Thoth, or the Egyptian god of wisdom.
Again, fake news?
I think it might be.
Okay.
Yes, because cards did not come from Egypt. It came from Asia via Silk Road. Okay, so another quote from the collectors.com blog. According to Etlieta, the book was engraved by Thoth priests in gold plates, providing the imagery for the first tarot deck. Drawing on these theories, so that he's assuming these tarot decks existed in Egypt. They did not, to my knowledge. So drawing on these theories, Etlieta published his own tarot deck in 1789, one of the first designed explicitly as a divination tool. And eventually, it was then referred to as the Egyptian tarot.
I think you're going to get that word by the end of this.
You think so? I usually am fine. I don't know.
No, it's okay. Some words just trip me up.
Divination. I got this. Fortune telling. I'm going to go with fortune telling.
You're hooked on phonics. You can do it, girl.
Fuck you. I studied journalism. I can read. Good. Okay, so bringing it to modern day, finally. According to Mary Kay Greer, hint, this bitch I'm going to cover later. She's a renowned practitioner, educator, and scholar in all things tarot. She is a she uses cartomanic reading as it was done back in the day. These readings were much more direct in their conclusion, whereas the New Age and modern tarot or oracle style reading allows for massive room for the individual's own beliefs and interpretation. So hence why I think there are so many people who shit on tarot as a fortune-telling tool today, i.e. someone very close to you.
Corey, my husband.
How'd you know? That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's another day.
That's another time. I
have a vivid memory of Krista yelling at Corey for mocking her while she was reading her tarot cards.
Reading his.
Oh, that's right.
Right? And I was like, fuck you. I'm not doing this then. You liked it. Somebody else enjoyed it. But anywho, I was not very kind, but I was reacting in a not mature way.
Corey deserves it sometimes.
Aw. Okay. So again, a lot of people shit on tarot as a fortune telling tool because they see how easily you can draw your own conclusions.
And it's a card game.
Exactly. From its roots, technically, to your point. So this is an example and a quote by Mary Kay Greer, who, again, I will cover later, and she's a quote-unquote tarot scholar from the collector.com blog that distinguishes between the two styles of reading. A cartomanic reading would sound something like this from Mary Kay. Quote, your wife will eat some tomatoes and fall off the roof and die horribly.
Damn.
Can you imagine hearing that shit?
Well, first of all, why are you on the roof eating tomatoes? That'd be my whole question. Like, most people eat them in the kitchen.
I have no effing idea. Great question. I just thought that was hilarious.
I mean, I'm assuming if you're eating tomatoes on a roof, you're probably...
Maybe you're cutting them down? No, they don't go that high, do they?
No, you're either probably drunk or high or something is off about you.
Well, hence why she may fall. I don't know. Anyway, that was apparently derived all from the narrative of the imagery and the symbols that were all that were recognizable.
She gets that from a tarot card?
Apparently.
I'm sorry, but I've looked at tarot cards and I've never thought
your wife's gonna
someone is eating tomatoes on a roof.
Anyway, the point being, that example is a really bizarre one that I just thought was hilarious. But those types of readings that are very specific are all derived from the narrative of imagery and symbols that we all recognize.
So when you read me my tarot cards tonight, I'd be like, I envision myself
you're gonna
on a roof.
be eating grapes, wink, wink, wine, and trip into the pool. Let's not let that happen.
I mean, that actually sounds more appropriate than the other one.
But anyway, so this card demonic reading is very, very specific based on the imagery, sun, moon, stars, things that all human beings know on this planet. In contrast, a more modern or oracle style approach would sound way more vague, along the lines of, I can see that you recently had a great disappointment. Mercury is in retrograde. Da 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 da. And that was a legit quote from Mary Kay Greer.
You sound like my friend from home.
So she says da 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 da, and she's supposed to be a tarot scholar. So I'm just going to point that out too. Okay, so the reason modern readings are so open to interpretation circles all the way back to artwork. As I showed you earlier, some beautiful art, if nothing else. As tarot grew, artists took way more liberty in their designs, and that became more personal to them and their experiences in life. So obviously, from an artist's perspective, they're all individuals, and as they say, art imitates life. So what they draw is going to be only in their brain and mind and soul versus standardized or universal archetypes and symbols.
But I think you can get so much into that because when you show someone artwork or someone's looking at artwork, like how it makes one person feel is so different than how it makes the other people feel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all like from your background, and it's like how you input your experiences into the image of what you take from it, the story.
Exactly. And that's why new age, quote unquote, readings are so open and so vague. And again, why people are like, that's bullshit. Because,
well, do they keep them so open? Because like we've talked about, like cold reading is like when you say something and someone has a reaction to it, you start to figure, oh, I'm on to something. Let me get into this a little bit more.
That's a great question for the skeptic in you. No, I don't think it was intentionally malicious, but maybe that's the naivety in me and the believer in me. But I think that as artists, right, we create.
Oh, I don't think the artists. I'm saying modern people today who use the cards.
Oh.
I don't think the artists had bad intent. I think the people using the cards today did that.
Got you. Yeah, that's correct. And I'll get into that a little bit more because now the printing press and digitization is rampant and everywhere. People can exactly create whatever they want. And I'll get into that right now. So this is collector.com quote. Most card readers recognize that the associations and perceptions of the person are being read, the person being read are just as important as the actual drawings on the cards. Divination cards offer a way to project certain ideas, whether subconscious or not, and to toy with potential outcomes for most important decisions. Thus, the scenes from a picture book, the best illustrations, typically offer clear visions of their subjects with an open-ended quality, so as though the action is unfolding before you. So one side you have very, very clear symbols that are universally human and global, like again, sun, stars, moon, sea, birds, dogs, grass, what have you. And then you get into cards that are assigned a meaning by the artist. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so today, there are hundreds of styles of decks and seemingly countless spreads from one card draw to a 3-card spread to the Celtic cross or the more complex bridge style, or the 12-circle card, often read in a new year, each card representing 1 month of the year in a 12-year calendar. In that format, the cards are spread out like a clock. So imagine the 12, the 1, the 2, and you read them going around to do your whole year, which we can take or leave this anecdote, but it's really poignant to me, a little triggering, because in 2020, New Year's Eve, I actually read my ex's cards and in that style of the 12-year calendar. And literally, I'm not kidding you, Ames, every card pointed to trouble or making a decision or having to turn around. Wow. Every fucking one. And both he and I
the cards don't lie. A little preview of my story. Yeah.
And we both looked at each other and we were like, fuck.
Well, did he believe in, not to talk about him too much, but did he believe in
he was
cards?
Raised Catholic, but also with Santeria, which is very, to most Americans or Western culture people, like quote unquote woo woo. So he has both, you know, those aspects of religion foundations, but as he grew up, he became a total skeptic too. Meanwhile, I continued my spiritualism and path.
But when you read, so I have a question though. So looking back at that time when you read the tarot cards, what did you think? Were you like, fuck?
I was terrified. Milty and I looked at each other and we're like, our hearts basically sank, and we both knew there was impending death of our relationship coming.
But you probably knew that before the cards.
I think I did. I think I intuited it far too early. But anyway, side note is that was New Year's Eve 2020, cut to August 2020, and now we're in August 2021, and he and I are now divorced. So anyway, for me, yes, again, back to my point, I could have interpreted them any way I wanted to have, sure, but it's a little uncanny that every single one of those cards represented what did happen. Take it or leave it, but it was a personal experience and a very trippy one, still to me to this day.
I could see that. But I also could see that you already had this feeling. It was just the visual in front of you made you feel a certain way.
Yeah. Bingo. And that's the beauty of reading, because it helps you. When I do a reading, I'll get to it later. I don't consider myself a fortune teller. I do not.
We're doing the tarot card reading at the end, right?
Yes, ma'am. Be prepared. So I don't consider myself a fortune teller by any means, but I do believe, like exactly what you just said, that these images can be a tool for anyone looking to make a change in their life or personal development. Like,
yeah. Anyway, moving on, because that shit is real depressing, and I'm in a very good place a year plus later. So the most popular method of cartomancy, which again from the top is using cards to tell a fortune, is used with a standard playing deck, and that game is called the Wheel of Fortune. Here, the reader removes cards at random and assigns the significance of them based on the way they were chosen. Though the interpretation of various cards varies by region, there's always like common significators for the future, like king, queen. So your face cards and your numbers all have a value. We don't have time to get into it right now, but if you are interested, look up cartomancy, the Wheel of Fortune, and you can kind of see what each of the, Queen of Diamonds, clubs, etc. means. So that's playing with the deck of cards. Tarot's images and deck actually consist of the major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana includes 22 trump cards.
Can you remind me what arcana means again?
I believe it's story arc, but I don't know for sure what it means. But essentially it's a suit. So like, we have our suits.
Yeah.
And then the major arcana are 22 cards. Mm-hmm. And then those include like symbols. So like archetypal characters, where the minor is much more along the lines of our numbered decks with 56 cards, very closely aligned with having the 4 suit. In my deck that I love so much, the Medicine Woman deck, it's coins, wands, cups, and swords as the 4 suits. Yeah. So you have your symbols and your archetypes for the major that don't necessarily have a number associated with it, but a word or a symbol. Mm-hmm. And then you have your minor with numbers and symbols. Before I get into reading your cards later, which I'm so excited about, and I think we covered this earlier, but I may or may not have fallen asleep during your last reading.
Oh yeah, we definitely talked about that.
So I'm not falling asleep today on you, babe.
You better not.
I won't sleep on you.
I was like, damn, my future's that dark or that boring. Who knows?
No, it was very bright every time I read them.
So bright, it put me to sleep.
Anyway, before I get into that, I would also like to share a little bit about Lotería and its heritage. And I know you know what it is because of me, but for those of you who are not into Mexican or Latinx culture, the way I was raised, Lotería is essentially Mexican bingo. And it's also primarily how I learned Spanish. And is, I think, another reason why I've been so drawn toward tarot at such a young age, maybe even earlier. So my abuela, my grandmother, would take me to play Lotería every day when we were in Mexico for pretty much the whole summer, every summer, since I was 5 or 6 years old. And the imagery was stunning. And there's always like, it's pretty. So you have essentially you have one bingo card, like you do, like bingo, but they're images. Mm-hmm. And then the caller reads the word that aligns with that image. And that's how you get your bingo instead of a number.
What does that have to do with tarot, though?
I'm going to get into it.
Oh, okay.
So because...
I was like, are you just telling me?
Yeah, there's a lot of association with it.
Okay.
Because of the imagery and numbers. If you're looking at the deck, a tarot... or excuse me, a Lotería card like that you're playing with, a tabla, they call it, you would look at it and be like, this looks like a tarot. It could be a tarot card.
Okay. I think they look like tarot cards to me.
Yeah. And according to the Tarot Heritage blog, there is a connection, indeed, to the old card game. Quote, the card images have compelling, iconic quality thanks to the more than 300 years of being distilled through European and Mexican folk culture. Several cards share names with the tarot: sun, moon, star, angel, and devil. 2 cards resemble their counterparts. The world as Atlas holding up the globe, as we all know, and death with a skeleton standing with a sheath and a hoodie. We know that one. Mm-hmm. End quote. Lotería was birthed in the late 1760s when the National Spanish Lottery was established, and the deck and the game boards were soon thereafter printed commercially. So again, to the masses. Mm-hmm. Later, during the Mexican Revolution, a French businessman named Don Clemente supplied the army with food and ammunition and soldiers who would then receive little decks of Don Clemente's Lotería cards within their tins and sardine trays, along with their bullets. Like, cool. Mm-hmm. But at least, he's giving them something to escape the horrificness of war, you know?
Yeah.
A little color, literally, with these printed colored decks. Clemente's cards then became the norm in Mexico. And today, if you do a quick Etsy or Google search, or if you've been to Mexico at all, any part of it, you're going to find Lotería imagery and art nearly everywhere. There are also, if you Google that again on Etsy, you're going to find some pretty fucking funny modernized adaptations that I really wanted to share. So, Ames, as I brought this up, I just had to share this with you. So I Googled Trump, Lotería cards.
Trump on these cards.
And it's so freaking funny to me because all of them are like just mockeries of him.
Well, my favorite one is like a big gaping sleeve, if you can imagine, and then this tiny little orange hand
poking out.
Yeah.
Oh, and mira, sorry, that means look, number 45, he was the 45th president.
Oh, yeah.
I just got that symbolism. But anyway, there's like a bunch of them, and there's one where looks like a little devil, and then there's one that looks like he's got his middle finger up, and it says El Pendejo. It's like motherfucker, basically. So yeah, I just love this adaptation of it. And I even made one for my sister featuring a female doctor that I got custom made. Thank you, Etsy guy. I will shout your store out. I don't remember right now off the top of my head, but he custom made it to make her look like her. And it says chingona, which means badass bitch, underneath the picture of a doctor.
Oh, I love it.
So, and it's in her office. So besides the stunning artwork and folklore on the cards themselves, modern practitioners or readers of tarot consider those readings akin to therapy and self-reflection.
It's like your therapy.
Yeah, exactly. It's what I do. And you obviously know that I don't consider myself actually psychic or fortune teller when I use my cards or when I read for you or anyone else.
You keep telling me you're a psychic, though.
Lately, I've had some moments. I have had. But I really, to your point, I use it to connect with my mind, body, and spirit. Like, what's going on for me right now? How can I use these messages? However I interpret them for me in my life, right? Specific to me right here, right now.
Well, how often do you do that?
Every full moon.
See, that's nice. I feel like a lot of us, or as a culture, we wait till like New Year's Eve, like once a year. And we should all probably spend more time reflecting on what's going on. And I don't know. I think it's a cool practice.
Thanks. And as you know, I have my beautiful meditation space that you designed.
That was fun.
And thank you.
Home Goods, which is like my favorite place in the world.
Shout out Amy Blair Designs on Insta because she's badass at anything artsy and design. So thank you.
Thank you, girl.
But that space really transformed, and it was able, because of what you did, was able to make me really feel centered and at home in my meditation space. So thank you. I will end it with a Rolling Stone piece that truly captures my personal thoughts around tarot, and again around why I think it's so important that even though maybe not everybody believes, right, that's fine, but like you can understand why, particularly now present in time, that we all need to do that soul searching that you just mentioned. So quote, "This year in particular has primed us all for a bit of soul searching." And
yes.
You think, right? And since many cities are facing another round of pandemic lockdowns, why not spend that extra time finding ourselves in a pack of tarot cards? End quote.
So when you think about the 90s, like it makes me think about like bucket hats, which are coming back, obviously, crop tops.
Oh my God. My
chokers.
sister's wearing them now. I'm so jealous. I gotta get on that.
You'll get there. And also, it kind of makes me think of a cult-like icon from the 90s, Miss Cleo.
I loved her.
And you might remember her infamous psychic hotline commercials where her famous catchphrase was, "You can't fool Miss Cleo," or "the cards never lie."
Sure do. There's a very famous Dave Chappelle skit about this.
Yes, I love that skit. That's awesome.
Oh my God, he's my dude, but that's, yeah.
And Miss Cleo's actual name, because we all know, you probably guessed that's not her real name, right?
Oh man. That'd be cool if it was.
She didn't come out of the womb and her parents were like, "Yep, let's name her Miss Cleo."
First name Miss, last name Cleo.
Her actual name is Yuri Del Harris, but she goes by several aliases in her lifetime, including the following: Clemely Harris, Yuri Perry, and Ree Perry.
Okay.
And makes you question why someone feels the need to rebrand themselves and give themselves a new name so often.
She's a lost soul, perhaps, in her cards.
She was born in Los Angeles on August 12th, 1962. At the age of 19, she was married, but then quickly divorced at the age of 21.
Okay.
Not very surprising.
Well, I'm not judging that because, as you know, what I've recently been through, so ain't no judgment.
I know, but getting married at 19, that's so young.
I know. And
like, you don't even know yourself then.
100. And even though I wasn't married at 19, I was practically married at 19, and look what had happened was. So you're right, yes.
She had 2 daughters, and I couldn't find much about her background at all. It was very limited. I looked for a long time, but the only thing I could really find was that she was raised Catholic.
Okay.
In 1996, she moved with her partner to Seattle and opened a theater company where they performed several plays that she wrote. She rebranded herself again, like I kept mentioning.
Wow. That is kind of an issue at that point.
Yeah. And this time she called herself Ree Perry. So very very perfect for working in that industry. In one of the plays that she wrote and she performed, she played a Jamaican character named Cleo.
Okay.
Her company didn't last long before they went bankrupt. The last play she performed and wrote was in 1997, so exactly like almost a year later. And a lot of her production members said they were never paid.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's so not okay.
She lied and told her employees that she had bone cancer and that her medical costs would prevent her from paying.
I'm sorry, you said she lied and said she had bone cancer?
Yes, it's one of those things where...
Come on.
I had a friend growing up one time, he was working, it was like he was 16 and he had like, I don't know, like a crappy fast food job. Or I can't remember what it was. But anyway, he lied to them and said that he was in the hospital and he named the hospital and they sent flowers and then the hospital reached out to the company.
Oh, no.
No, that's embarrassing, right?
That's so bad. Did they fire him immediately?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
I hope
but like,
so.
you don't want to get that specific with your lies. Second of all, don't lie. But
if you're sick, all you got to say is I'm on my period for the ladies out there.
I couldn't really say that.
I don't know what do men say. Can they even? I don't know.
Anyway, I was just like, don't lie.
You don't gotta
Anyone,
do that.
if you're young listening, don't lie and say you're in the hospital. Just say you're not feeling well.
Right. And you
don't
have
have to
sick time
explain
for a reason. So don't ever feel bad about using it.
Not using what?
Your sick time.
Yeah, but you don't have to you don't even have to explain yourself.
Right, I'm sick. Using sick time. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
You don't have to be like...
In our case, I'm hungover as fuck is what you should read into. But obviously, we don't admit that.
No, but I feel like...
I'm sick today.
I also feel like, though, you don't have to be like, I'm sick at the hospital and the address is 1313 East 56th Street. No, he didn't do that. I'm just kidding.
Or actually, I mean, I'm not proud of this, but this past week I said I had a migraine. And it was because I was so
I don't know if I want to say this recording, but I mean, according to work, I get migraines.
Oh, me too. Wink, wink.
So where was I? So she
lied.
Yeah, she lied about, and she told them she had bone cancer. She couldn't pay them. Mm-mm. And then I don't know how you want to look at this. It could either be like sadly or ironically, at the age of 53, so she's no longer with us, she died from colon cancer.
Okay, so that's, what do you call it? Karma. I don't know. If you lie about something that's serious, for those that actually are suffering of colon cancer, that's...
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on her, though.
You know what I mean? Oh, no. Of course, you don't wish any disease on anyone.
Yeah. So after her company went bankrupt, she moved to Florida and responded to an ad that was looking for telephone operators. She was hired to act in a commercial for the Psychic Readers Network, and the other network was called Access Resource Services.
It sounds like PBS, but I know it's not.
Yeah. And normally I wouldn't bore you guys with those titles, but it's very important that I call these companies out because I'll get into it a lot in a minute. And these companies hired her, and she was going to work for a psychic hotline and ultimately became the face of this hotline, as we all know from these infamous commercials. In the commercials and in her audition, she decided to act like Cleo from her play, and the company decided that she ultimately should add Miss to it.
Oh, boy.
And this is how Miss Cleo was born.
Okay.
In the commercials, she would appear as a psychic, and she claimed that she was a shaman from Jamaica. On these commercials, would often feature Harris in a colorful turban in a candlelit room with like incense burning.
Like
just like your cliche, like spiritual. Oh, I'm so spiritual. Let me have like some incense.
The crystal ball.
Crystal ball. Like everything you kind of imagine that's very cliche. And in the commercials, she'd be listening to a viewer, and she would often be using tarot cards as a guide to answer the caller's questions. In the commercials, she would often give advice to her viewers. Callers would call in to ask about if their lovers were cheating on them, what to do because they were in a fight with their sister. They would ask her for financial advice. The list goes on and on. Like any scenario you can ever think of. And Miss Cleo never seemed to bat an eye. She always had like the right solution or the perfect advice, well, in her mind, for every situation. And I have to say, when I started to research Miss Cleo, I ultimately... first thing had to hop on YouTube because I remember these commercials, but I don't remember them vividly because it's been so long. I got on YouTube. That was like the first thing I did was like watch some of her ads. And I have to say, I didn't think I would like her, but I absolutely loved her.
Oh my God.
I just loved how cutthroat she was. Like she just told it as it is. And like sometimes I feel like if someone was calling me and saying some of the things they were saying in the commercials, I was like, I hope I'd be ballsy enough to say that. But it was funny.
Well, you are a straight shooter, shall we say, in general. So I don't think you'd have any problems.
I'm Miss Cleo too. Minus the Jamaican accent and being a psychic and all that.
You're like a, what do you call it? Like a gypsy that made her way to England somehow. I don't fucking know.
And one of the ads I watched, I loved how she literally told one of her callers, she said, if you want to believe it's over, then stop answering his booty calls.
Ooh.
I feel like I would say that to someone.
I like that. Very to the point. And do you see that in my future? Do you see you telling me that in my future?
Not even a question with a doubt. 200% yes. I'm going to have to give you that pep talk.
No,
I already know it now.
He's going to stop after answering my booty call. Thank you.
We'll go back to this recording one day and you'll be like,
You're right.
Do you think I would ever ask you this? And I'll be like, beep, beep. Let's play this.
In the sky gods again. No, I actually did recently ask you this, to be honest with you. So you're right. About someone.
And hopefully I never tell you this, because this is something else she said, which is kind of messed up. She told one lady that her ex was a lot better than her current boyfriend.
Oh God, help me, no.
No, that's bad.
I hope not.
That's kind of like
look, if my ex was better then than the new one, ooh, we got major issues in my choice of men if that's the situation.
And I also absolutely loved, another thing I enjoyed was like how terrible and shitty the graphics were. Because in my mind, 2000 doesn't seem that long ago, but then you feel old when you watch stuff from back then.
We're going to get to shitty design skills in my case, girl. Like real shitty design.
I'm ready for it. But this was like early to late 90s. And if you're like a millennial in your 30s, watch it. It kind of ages you a bit because you're like, wow.
I remember this.
Yeah, but it is weird because 2000 in my mind was 5 years ago. But really, obviously, when you do the math.
21 years ago.
I know. It's crazy.
Oh my God, I'm old. I can't. That's okay. We're young at heart.
Exactly. After the commercials had aired, several years later, Harris had said that she never claimed to be a medium. In her own words, she was from a family of spooky people. Very vague, right?
Okay.
And she was
I'm curious. I want to know.
And she was well versed in voodoo from studying under a Haitian teacher. And then the Psychic Readers Network and Access
Sorry, did you know if that was true or not? The Haitian voodoo part?
No, I don't.
I'm going to assume no if she's a thespian, like making that up.
She doesn't really have any Jamaican roots. They said that her father might have been from Jamaica. That's the closest tie she had.
Okay.
But a lot of the stuff was like a character she's playing.
Got it.
And then going back to the networks, the Psychic Readers Network and Access Resource Services, they instantly told her she couldn't use the word voodoo. They're like, no, don't use that word.
It's the devil's work.
And they basically told her, like,
turn off our white listeners immediately. No.
Yeah, they were like, basically, you're a psychic, and that's the only phrase you can use.
That's some bullshit because it is an actual religion, which we're going to actually cover someday down the line. But like, it's very clearly the way that it's presented in mass media. Voodoo, I'm talking about, is so wrong. Anyway, I'm
excited to learn about it. I know like probably the same amount as most people know about it, so it'll be an interesting episode.
Yeah, I'm excited to go there because I did read a lot about it.
The commercials would claim that the first 3 minutes wouldn't cost anything for a caller, but it turns out the majority of time, callers would spend that time on hold. And this is so shady. The callers would call a toll-free 800 number, but then the operators would connect them to another number that would start charging them.
Oh my! So basically, it's like a racket.
Yes.
Of like waiting on 1-800 call numbers.
But they think they're on 1-800 because that's toll-free, but they would call and connect them with the operator.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they don't realize they're being connected to another number. So, like, and as soon as that started happening, the time starts ticking and they're getting charged. And they don't know any of this.
But they would never disclose that. That's some bullshit.
No, because on the ad, which I'm going to go into this so much, but basically they would charge $5 a minute, which is $5. That's like
Sylvia Brown pricing.
Or how much does a lawyer charge? Do they charge that much?
I don't know. I can't do that. But their like hourly rates are insane.
That's what I'm saying. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, probably.
And then they would be connected. So they'd be charged $5 a minute. And even if they're on hold, they're being charged.
Wow.
And then they would be connected to Miss Cleo or one of the other quote unquote, I'm going to say psychics working out of their home, where they would do tarot card readings to answer their questions. And they would pretend to see the future.
So maybe we can get tarot card reading jobs from home.
We could. Maybe. I don't know. Do you think they pay well?
I don't know. I'll tell you. I'll research.
Okay, we'll start looking at ads this weekend. I feel like maybe we could. The company hired many phone actors, so they weren't psychics they were hiring.
Wow.
And the workers said that they were given a script to work from. They were told that the main goal was to keep a caller on the phone for at least 15 minutes.
Total pyramid scheme.
Because money. That's all they were after.
You're racking it up without the customer knowing. That's so shady.
And And then this is probably my favorite part of like all my research is that I found an article from a woman. Her name is Bennett Hedson, and she was actually hired to be a so-called psychic for Miss Cleo.
Okay.
And at the time, she was a college student who was trying to pay her rent in New York City.
Okay, and who, I haven't been there, done that, but yeah, we all been college students trying to pay our rent.
Exactly. And at the time, she was working at Gap, and she said she came across an ad for phone actors and was super excited about working from home and not working in retail. And of course, like anyone, any of my friends, that is one industry I've never really worked in. Girl. Have you?
Oh, yeah. I can't believe I never told you about this. I did once, and it was not even a full year. It was fucking seasonal at Express. Remember that store?
Yeah. Remember it. What do you mean? It's still around.
Yeah, it was kind of like our like teeny bopper transitioning from tween to like sexy. Like
I still love Express.
I do too. But anyway, it was my store back then, and I kind of actually, I stopped shopping there. I don't know, early college, but I did it for the winter break, and it was hell because not only was it like retail, which is just a nightmare in general, but they would loop the holiday music on poppy, like, oh my God, the most obnoxious poppy music. And that's the year I started hating Mariah Carey, Christmas, All I Want for Christmas.
I love that song.
I used to until I had to hear it for 8 hours a day on my feet.
I was a lifeguard as a high school student, I guess.
That's pretty impressive.
And they played the Shit is Banana song from Gwen Stefani.
Oh, that's my jam.
I can't stand that song.
Oh, I have memories of going out to underage to the clubs. I'm like,
and because we listened like Top Hits radio.
Sure.
You don't realize how they recycle the same songs over. Because most of the time I only listen to that if I'm like jumping in a car to go to the grocery store, do little errands. And we're listening to hours on end. And that summer I was like, I can't hear the song one more time.
Shit is bananas.
Yeah, it brings me back. And then my friends, a few of my friends worked at Kohl's.
Oh, God.
And they told me that people would take dumps in the changing
I'm sorry. Did you say like dumps as in like...
Yes, that scarred me. I was like, what the hell is going on in this world?
How, like little self-respect one must have.
And there's a restroom in the store. Why do you have to use the changing room?
I just can't.
Yeah, they would tell me that stuff and I'm like, no, I can't work in retail.
Yeah, so I agree. I recommend not doing it as well.
Well, I'm hoping I have to go move back to, hopefully I'm moving forward in my career.
Up in the world, girl.
Yeah, exactly. And she said I thought this was really interesting, moving back to Bennett. She said she applied and said there was basically no questions asked. Like there wasn't really an interview process.
Oh my, so she just applied and she got the job on the spot?
Basically, like she talked to someone and they're like, yeah, you got it. And then she said she applied with a friend at the same time. And like the guy he didn't interview them, so I can't say the interviewer, but the guy who was giving them the job, approved them, was like really creepy. And he like randomly, like totally left field, nothing had to do with the conversation, asked her friend if she was a stripper.
That's so illegal.
But first of all, I was like, they were just kind of like astounded, like, what? That makes no sense. We're not talking anything like that. Why do you even think that? And her friend was just like, no. And then the subject changed and they moved on. She said like...
So weird.
Because the article is from the New York Times and it was about 10 years later. So she's like kind of recalling on all this. And it was just like a little tidbit she mentioned, like it was strange.
Okay.
And she got hired that summer, and she said, I thought this was kind of hilarious. She would often smoke, and then she would guzzle cheap wine while talking to customers over her landline, taking it back to like old school.
Kind of wins my heart over.
Yes. And she said she basically described herself as a 20-year-old who lived in the suburbs her whole life, very sheltered, and was completely clueless about real life issues.
Sure.
And you can't really blame her. But she was kind of talking about like, imagine yourself at 20 and then you're having these people call in with like big life events that are happening or these big struggles that you've kind of lived a sheltered life. Could you really have identified with them and helped them? At that stage, I was so sheltered. I would not even know what to say to those people.
I don't want to say that I was sheltered, but I was certainly not mature enough to handle any life.
Yeah, but I think you probably lived in a more of a bubble than you realize.
Probably.
Yeah.
I probably did.
I think we all did. Most of us did. I feel like at that age, I hadn't been through too much. So I don't think I would have been I mean, I was a good listener. I don't know if I would have been able to tell them what to do with their lives. Still don't. Like, who am I to tell someone to do what to do with their lives?
You told me what to do with my life this week, what not to do with my life this weekend. And I
what was it?
Not go to the dog park for a certain reason.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That was good advice.
It was good advice.
I can give good advice occasionally. Because she wasn't actually a psychic, the Psychic Readers Network provided her with a script, like I mentioned, to read. And then this is the funniest part. She didn't have actual physical tarot cards. It was like solitaire, like a animated computer. Like she'd click her mouse and then it would like flip a card.
Yes. I spent, speaking of the 90s, hours playing that shit. And my grandma taught me the actual card game, like physical card deck that I covered in my earlier case about the Mountain Luck cards, but oh my God. And then when I learned how to play it on Microsoft Windows, oh my God, I spent hours doing that.
I was a Tetris girl.
Oh, I played that too, but definitely more solitaire.
I played Tetris, even in college, I played it for hours.
It's addicting. It's a good mental just escape.
But anyway, so she had all this.
So she wasn't even using the divination tools that I covered earlier at all. It was just like...
Well, she's just telling you like how bad this company was. And she said she didn't use like the script. She didn't use like the animated, simulated tarot cards. She just made stuff up as she went along.
Pretty cool.
And I thought this was funny. She said sometimes she'd play a character named Cassandra, who was a husky voice Southern belle. I'm not going to even try to do an accent. Who called everyone honey child. Other times she played Gabrielle with an accent that I imagine she said that
Gabrielle, maybe?
Yeah, sorry.
Gabrielle. Yeah. That's right.
She became a man.
Man, baby.
She became a man and her name was Matt.
No, and then she said she imagined the accent to be French-ish. Not French, but French-ish. And she said people seem to like Cassandra, the Southern belle, the best, but she can only do that for so long because her throat would eventually start to hurt.
Yeah, that deep husk, I would imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine. She would ask the callers questions until she had enough information to make a good guess about their future or make a semi-educated decision what to tell them if they were asking for advice.
Okay.
That'd be like a cold, hot reading type deal.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of hear them out if they give you any indicator of, I'm having marital trouble.
Or like a tone of voice.
I'm depressed or...
And then this is a great quote from the article. She said, when a woman asked me who her true love was, I told her that the spirits were sending me a mental picture of a star. Maybe I'll meet him at a planetarium, I said, affecting Cassandra's confident drawl, or Texaco.
So,
sorry, I just think it's...
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm like, wait, trying to draw the line between the two there. It's quite a difference.
Yeah. You might meet him at a porta potty or a nice museum. I'm sorry, it's like polar opposites, a gas station or a museum.
Where am I going to meet my future husband?
Circle K.
Oh, no.
Do they have those around here in Phoenix?
They do, but you know what, though? From what I've heard is that QTs have the nice bathrooms, and that's where all the Uber drivers and truck drivers go, because Circle K is like nasty and dingy.
Okay, so I'll level
QT.
I'll love you up to I'll love you.
You'll allow me to meet my man at QT.
You're gonna meet him at a QT or a ball, like where you're wearing a
masquerade,
like
ball.
A gown ball, and
yes.
Yeah, it's gonna be one or the two.
You're sending me off to a fantasy land now. Next.
Yes. And back to the quote, there was a silence on the other end. She said, the lady responded, my ex-husband is a sheriff, the woman said, awestruck, with a badge. And then she replied,
that's so lucky.
Yeah, and she said, that's it. Get him back. He's the one. And Bennett, in the article, she did go on to say, like, looking back, she does feel a little guilty. Because she was like, I was just pulling things, like, out of air. And, like, she's like, she has no idea. Like for that lady, she just told her to go back with her ex-husband. She doesn't know how that's going to impact her life. And she said she often wonders about the people she talked to. Like, did she really make an impact? Did she do did she make a negative impact?
Okay.
Yeah, so I
don't know. I feel bad because like recently coming through something as horrific as a divorce, like I would hate to have had that been dictated by a fraudulent psychic. Like that'd be pretty bad.
Yeah, But again, I kind of think it falls on the network because she was 20.
Sure.
And I don't really put blame on her because she probably was just desperate for money. And she was like, oh, this is going to be a cushy job. I can drink wine and work at home.
Guzzle wine.
And talk on the phone. And like me and my friend, because her friend was doing it too. It sounded like probably hang out and have some laughs. So I feel like at 20, you don't really realize like the way you impact people with like your words.
Sure.
So I don't really blame her. I blame her more the network that they would hire people who aren't really psychics.
Well, and so impressionable.
Yeah. And long story short, she said at the end of the article, probably guzzling wine, talking to people late at night. Not much do much for her being in college, if you can imagine.
I was going to say, wait a minute. Yeah, wasn't she in college at this time?
I mean, I feel like a lot of people were partying.
Listen, I can't tell you how many exam rooms I probably was still drunk in. So
yeah,
no judgment there.
I mean, yeah, there's no judgment. I was partying my ass off in college. But still, one thing to say is she did end up flunking like all her classes. Like she failed, and she
clearly didn't show up or pay attention.
Yeah, and she failed. But the cool thing is, full circle, and she ended up becoming a therapist.
Whoa!
But I think it's to me, I can see the connection. If you were able to connect with random people so well, well, we think she did so well. She said people also, which was really funny, is they would call in from Miss Cleo, and she'd pick up different accents. Obviously, not Miss Cleo. And she said people never once questioned her.
Yeah, they weren't. She has authority in that.
Yeah, but it's just funny. They never once were like, "Oh, I called for Miss Cleo."
Yeah, again, because she's owning it. Like I got this sense.
But yeah, I can see her being a therapist because she probably obviously knew how to communicate with people well,
right? And
read people well. Because like if you were doing an okay job,
it's a hard job, man.
Yeah. And tying it back to the networks, the Federal Trade Commission said almost 6 million people called in from these commercials.
6 million?
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Wow.
And this is the bigger wow. They racked up to $1 billion in charges. The average
billion.
Billion.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm. The average phone call costs about $60, which seems like a steal after we discussed Sylvia Brown in episode 1.
$1,400.
Well, $700 a phone call for a half hour, and if you had an hour, it was like $1,400.
Yeah. Steal.
Yeah, a steal.
Bargains.
Half off.
Bargains don't lie.
I talked to some random lady who's cuckoo for $700.
Fuck. That's so scary. Anyway. Keep moving, sorry.
A lot of callers were blindsided by the fact they were being charged at all, and a lot of people didn't end up paying their bill. A lot of callers complained that they were overwhelmed, like they were getting like emails and collection letters.
I could see that.
And calls like to pay their bill.
Collection calls, yep. That's so fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad.
I mean, these people are already vulnerable, and now you're going after them financially, like those networks are so predatory.
$500 million in customer fees.
But I guess 500 million is nothing compared to 6 billion, you know?
Like, that's true. That's like
so
nothing.
Unacceptable. That's a penny to them.
That's crazy.
A fraction.
When you think about it that way.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
The main argument of the lawsuit was that they made a false promise in their ad that it was free. So basically false advertising.
Absolutely. And that is my background in marketing journalism. Like, I know that. So you can't do that. You cannot make a false claim. Our university does.
The networks both agreed to stop selling their services over the phone, and they also had to pay a $5 million fine, which is like, again, nothing. Yeah. I feel like companies just get away with murder, basically.
They do. And they still are right now.
It's so unfair.
With J&J, who else is right now? Merck, the opioid crisis people. I think it's J&J and Merck.
It's heartbreaking.
Don't quote me on that.
I mean, there's so many, and like global warming, how we don't hold companies like responsible.
Nobody.
I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah, same.
Let's not get into that.
That's another
sad, tragic topic.
Another sad topic for another day.
Harris was not charged with anything because she did not own any part of the company. She was just an employee.
Miss Cleo. Harris, Miss Cleo. Got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been calling her Harris and Miss Cleo, so it might get a little confusing. So when I say Harris, I'm talking about Miss Cleo. She was upset that her reputation was ruined by the lawsuit because of all these lawsuits, a lot of people believe that Harris, and people still to this day, believe she's in jail if they don't know she's dead.
Whoa. That's kind of sad. Too.
Yeah, I do feel for her a little bit because I do feel like she was just an employee, but she really is the face of the company. When she wasn't really the one who thought of the company or it was like the brain power behind it. She was just kind of like the one who was the face for it.
I think she got manipulated herself.
I go back and forth a lot.
I really think so. I mean, she was desperate and vulnerable too, and I don't know. That's messed up. So.
I don't think she's totally innocent, though. I think there is a fine line of like she was willing to pretend to be a psychic, and I know she was acting in the commercial, so maybe I should be a little more forgiving.
Yeah, because she is an actor.
But there's other things like where she didn't pay her employees.
That's messed up. Yeah, and the lying about cancer. That's not cool.
No, I'm a little torn with her as a person.
Okay.
I see a little bit like she was taken advantage of, and then she kind of like fell on the sword for like this company, not willingly, but she is the face. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I go back and forth. I don't have a clear opinion on her.
If anything, she should have gotten, this is the creative ad marketing PR person in me, but like she should have gotten, and she probably didn't know how or that she even should do this, but like she should have gotten rights to her likeness and image and likeness. Let's just like they're doing in the NCAA right now. Like all those college players that are in the sports games, there's a lawsuit pending that the NCAA has to pay them for their image and likeness.
That's awesome.
NCAA does not have to pay them. It's the games that make and use their image and likeness, which they should. It is their image and likeness. So fuck yeah.
I think it's so wrong that football players, any type of athlete from a college isn't getting paid because they make so much money from them. That's so wrong in my opinion.
That too. So yeah, not only are the universities and colleges making money off these young kids, but the gaming aspect, exactly. Like that's your image, that's your face, and anybody in advertising knows like you better motherfucking pay me for my image and likeness.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I have a little tidbit about that in a second. I'm gonna go over.
Okay,
but she feels like that the media portrayed her as like as a monster. Mm-hmm. And from the interviews I read, Harris portrayed herself as a victim to all this.
Okay.
She said that the people she worked for didn't want people to know she was an accomplished playwright.
Oh, well.
It's kind of like, well, I don't know.
I don't know.
Does that really matter? That part I was kind of like, whatever. She claimed that the fame caused a lot of emotional pain and she didn't make much money from it. This part, my jaw literally dropped when I read it.
Okay.
And wait for this. So most psychics that worked for the company were making around 14 cents a minute. And she was on the higher side, and she was only being paid 24 cents a minute.
Oh my God. Not even 10 cents more. Get out of here.
Which is about $15 an hour. Overall,
back to retail? Hell no.
Yes, it's early.
No.
She is like early 90s.
Oh, okay, right.
So it's a little bit more, but it's not a lot of money.
No.
And said overall, so think about the millions and billions of dollars
billions,
they made.
As you said. 600 billion, you said, or 6 billion?
Yeah, but imagine all the money they made from her, like, because from her acting.
Right.
And she only earned $5,000 from the commercials.
Over her whole span.
That's what I found.
No, that's criminal.
I feel like criminal. It. And so after her commercials were taken off air, and people today still like absolutely love her.
I still do. I'll admit it. I still do.
She is still today, or not today, sorry, she's dead. Rest in peace. But after she was a practicing psychic. And at that time, she would charge around like, probably from her fame and like people knowing her. Mm-hmm. She would charge around like $75 to $250 for a session.
Which is still nothing compared to...
Yeah, for kind of being like a celebrity cult-like icon, you think you could charge a little bit more.
$750 an hour like someone else you covered.
But you would think like, I don't know, you would think rich people would be like, it wouldn't be a cool brag to go home and be like, oh, Miss Cleo read my cards.
Yeah, you'd think. Man, that's so...
And I thought this was really interesting. In 2006, Harris's teenage godson inspired her to come out about her sexuality in an interview with The Advocate.
Okay.
She said that
great publication, by the way.
She said that he was 16 when he confided in her that he was gay, and that she said that his confidence of not being scared about coming out inspired her to do the same.
Oh.
So that was like pretty late in her life. So you kind of have to think about like
that part's heartbreaking. The
fact that she like never truly got to be herself for much of her life, because she died shortly after that. And then I don't know, I'm like kind of torn with her because I feel like she had probably had an identity crisis because she was faking this Jamaican accent, which she would do on and off camera.
Okay. So she like became Miss Cleo even off the line.
Yeah. And got it. And then she had all these names like, and then she didn't ever come out about the fact she was gay. So it kind of makes me feel like she didn't really know who she was. Like she was a lost soul. So part of me feels for her.
I totally lean that way.
And she said that she held back for so long. And the quote from the article, The Advocate, explains it best. The reason it's scary is because in my personal experience, Black culture throughout the world have a more difficult time accepting homosexuality in their family. I have family members who will be shocked. When I came out to a few friends in the 80s, I had a number of friends who turned their backs on me and walked away, which I think is like absolutely heartbreaking. Like that's the hardest thing someone has to do. And then for like your close friends not to accept you.
Or your family, you know, it's awful. Sort of adjacent to that, as you know, in a personal relationship of mine, and I've been seeing it for 15 years, and it's really, really sad to see this person have to wear a mask their whole life. And it's like, wow, like you can't even be who you are on a daily basis.
And like, not that I understand it, but I would think that the fact that when you are able to tell people, it's probably the time you've accepted yourself.
You accepted it yourself. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shortly after this, in 2007, under a different name again, this time she released a spoken word poetry album called Convicted for My Beliefs and Full Moon Madness.
Love that name.
I knew you would. I love it too.
Hardcore.
And I listened to a little bit of it, not much, because I was like, I didn't have much time.
I'm going to look it up.
But it was good. And she said she wanted to express herself after the 2007 campus shooting that happened at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I will tell you, once again, she's faking a Jamaican accent during the album too.
Well, I think that's the only thing she knows how to make an income, maybe.
So this is my question I wanted to ask you. So do you think, like, if you were like her, let's say her godson, she obviously was close to, who came out to her, they had a close relationship. Do you think she was like using a Jamaican accent when they were hanging out, or do you think she was just using her normal voice, or do you think that she did it so much she just normally talks like that, or do you think she ever got tired and she's like, damn, I just want to talk like my...
I think she didn't know she was doing it anymore because it became so much of her character, like very good actors do, right? Like I think we discussed Jim Carrey, like became his character.
Yeah, people get worried about him when he played like depressive characters. They'd be like worried because he would become so much of that character.
Exactly. So I'm assuming because of her acting and theater background, that's what happened to her. Like she just got lost in herself.
Or got consumed by it. But it's just interesting. Yeah. I was just wondering if she like ever shut it off and just talked the way that felt natural.
No. And I think I told you I was watching recently the Halston show, the really famous...
I started that. The first scene is from
fashion designer.
The very first scene's in my hometown.
It is?
Well, I don't know. I need...
Filmed there or like...
Supposed to be there.
Got it.
I don't know
like when he was a little boy, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm from Mount Vernon, but Evansville's like 10 or 15 minutes away.
Oh my God. Well, anyway, as the show progresses, you'll see him going from a little country boy to famous fashion designer, and he transforms his entire persona, not only, but his accent is like, it becomes actually very theatrical. Like, no,
yeah, I'll have to watch it. I just watched like a few minutes of it, and I was like, whoa.
Well, and by the end of the series, he's still talking like that, even towards the end of his life. So
I'll have to watch it. Oh, and this is like totally goes back to what you mentioned earlier, and I like you called it.
Okay.
So I think this is interesting. So in 2014, she was asked to be in a commercial acting like Miss Cleo for French Toast Crunch. The commercial was quickly taken off air because the lawyers from Psychic Readers Network said that this character infringed upon their intellectual property rights.
I'm surprised they still exist as a network, to be honest, but...
And because this commercials look too similar to what she had done for them.
That makes me so mad because she created the character, but after studying intellectual property law, just a very minuscule part of it in my recent master's program, you actually can't do that legally. But it's so frustrating because she created it. They didn't. Yes, they paid her, but they didn't pay her to create this person. She did it. out of her own volition.
And I also feel like a certain extent, like they didn't pay her jack shit. Let her go act for a commercial and make a little money.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure French Toast Crunch were paying her a lot more than they paid her.
Absolutely. And so maybe you don't have the answer to this, but did she ever get her own lawyers to fight back? Probably not.
It doesn't sound like it because they immediately just they aired it, and then it like shortly after they just took off air right away.
Yeah.
So if she had lawyers, it would have probably went back on air. So.
Well, the cereal brand, I don't know which one it is, if it's Kellogg's or what's the other one? Post. There's one more too, but I don't know what brand it is. They probably were like, fuck it. We're not going to do our corporate lawyer fees just for this one commercial.
Yeah, I could see that too. It's like not worth it.
Right.
Anyway, so to kind of wrap up my story, eventually she came around. She said she made peace with her time as being Miss Cleo.
Okay.
She said she describes herself as a sensitive person, but through this experience, she like grew some thick skin, and she kind of like she was the butt of so many jokes for so many years.
That's so sad.
But she said she finally was like able to laugh a little bit at herself, and at the time she worked at the Psychic Network.
Okay.
Like probably was like the only way you could cope a little bit. So, like, what else are you gonna do?
Right.
You gotta laugh a little bit. And she said in an interview, actually her favorite bit, which you mentioned earlier, was the Dave Chappelle show when he did the whole skit on her.
Oh, she was still alive when that aired?
Yeah. And
oh my gosh. Okay.
So she said that was probably like her favorite spoof, like funny bit about her.
So good.
Yeah. So I think like full circle, she kind of came around, and that was kind of like maybe that was her way of coming to peace with it, because there wasn't really much she could do. It's not like she had money to go hire an expensive lawyer to come after these networks, because these networks were worth billions.
They pardon the language here, but they raped her of her money and her rights, frankly, I think.
Exactly. And so Miss Cleo to me is so interesting, because I went into this not knowing any of this. I thought she was like the brain power behind everything. It was kind of like her vision. Mm-hmm. Hey, let me start these commercials and have people call me.
Right, you like thought she owned the network.
Would you think that?
I did. Yeah, I did.
I think everyone did. Yeah. I don't think
because she was literally the master of the brand, like you said so many times now. Like she was it, and yeah, I would assume. But
so I do think she's a victim. I do think she did some questionable things in her life. Don't really believe she was a psychic. I think she was a great actor. Mm-hmm. Obviously, she was writing plays and acting, so obviously she was very good at it. So all around, I would say I don't think she's a terrible person, but she did some very questionable things that I don't think were right. But I do, in a sense, feel a little bit of sorry. I feel sorry for her in a way.
No, I totally do.
And to me, when I read all this, I was like, wow, this was not where I was thinking the story was going.
And once again, like I'm leaning towards this person isn't a piece of shit. They just were given circumstance. See, look, I'm challenging my own beliefs here. I don't think she's a terrible person at heart. She just was really given, no pun intended, a really shitty deck of cards.
Yeah, and you can imagine, like, I was trying to think about, like, the fact that her company went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And, like, can you imagine, like, you probably owe so much money, and she couldn't pay these people that
the
worked for her.
That must have sent her
and that she was, like, desperate for work, so she sees this ad in the newspaper, and she's like, well, let me try this. They hire immediately. So my take on Miss Cleo is I go a little bit back and forth, and if you're very interested, I definitely say check out her album called, again, Convicted for My Beliefs and Full Moon Madness. If anything, it is what my mother-in-law loves to say. She likes to say everything's a hoot. She does. Oh, she's from the Midwest. She says everything's a hoot. Anyway,
I love it. I love it.
And that is my story.
Awesome. Really great job. I'm gonna say I'm a fan. I'm Team Cleo.
I am too, deep down, and I love her. Like I said earlier, like I can get behind a woman who has like doesn't put up bullshit. Like, listen, honey, if you want a man to respect you, stop answering his calls.
You know, that's what my girl tells me all the time. Well, that's really funny that you earlier talked about like crappy design from the 90s, because we got something coming up in my case for my tarot expert. That girl, that design, it's upsetting.
Okay, yeah, so basically you kind of did it for me, the segue. We're going to hand it off to Krista now.
Okay, are you ready for me to jump into Mary K. Greer?
Am I ready?
I hope so. It's going to be a little wacky and funny. I think you're going to get a hoot out of some of my commentary today. So I will start out by saying that Mary K. Greer is thought to be presently regarded as the modern day quote unquote godmother of tarot. I'm just looking at your face. In the tarot world, I should preface that. So this is her bio from her website. Just check out her website first and foremost. Like, I need you to look at it because it's hideous. Like,
in what way?
Just look at it. Just motherfucking look at that shit. It's a shitty ass 1989 circa 90 website, clearly a WordPress. And it's like, I can't, like, if you're trying to be a modern card reader, you might need a little inspo or makeover in the design department. Just gonna start off by saying that
the PR girl's giving some hate.
I am, and I'm really irritated by this website. Like, if you want to represent the practice, like, you gotta represent and you gotta look good. This shit, I keep going. I have more commentary.
So she's out of touch.
Quite a bit. I mean, just look at it's just heinous. Like, oh, honey. Anyway, I have more.
It looks like a shitty fifth grader's like report, like a report, or like
yes, it does.
Or
Holy
they like
shit.
built a website for their homework assignment.
Oh my god, it does. Like Coding 101 in the 90s. Oh god, it's horrible. Anyway, sorry about it, Mary Kay. I just can't with it.
I keep on thinking of Mary Kay, the
Olsen twin?
No, the makeup line.
Oh yeah. Did you ever get sold that shit back in the day?
I did.
My friend Stephanie swears by this crazy, oh no, that's Avon. Oops, competitor. She swears by this like anti-aging thing.
I went to something, it was supposed to be a free facial, and it ended up being that.
What kind of facial we talking about?
No, but it ended
up
up
being some fellation face.
They ended up me putting on the products on my own face, and then they're trying to like suck me into the cult.
So you got sucked into a Mary Kay makeup cult?
Well, I didn't actually. I just bought a few things, but I didn't actually sell Mary Kay. But they tried.
Oh, damn, girl. Was it a friend of a friend type bullshit?
It was like my roommate was sold into it, and she brought me along.
Oh, honey. Does she still do it now? I'm just
no, she never did it.
Oh, okay.
Me and her the whole time we're sitting there like, how do we get out of this situation?
Oh, no.
And she's like, she felt bad. She's like, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. She sold it as like a free facial.
Well, I'm glad you didn't get sucked in to a multi-level marketing scheme. Thank you for using your wit as always. Anyway, back to Mary K. Greer. This is the bio from her shitty website that is also replicated in the book that I own right here for show and tell. I will get into that in just a minute. This book is called 21 Top Tarot Techniques and published in 2008. Quote about Mary's bio. Mary K. Greer is a scholar, writer, teacher, and professional tarot consultant with more than 40 years of experience in tarot as an author and teacher. She advocates as a revolutionary approach to learning and using cards that emphasizes personal insight and creativity. As an expert tarot reader, she works as, oh, you're going to love this, a quote, midwife of the soul.
Wow.
Using techniques that are interactive, transformational, and empowering. Not done. One more line. Mary is the founder of the Tools and Rites of Transformation. Guess what that acronym is? Tarot.
Oh.
Catchy. You got that marketing down, girl. You got your design. Anyway, she is the member of, oh God, you're going to love this even more. Sorry, I can't. Okay, and she is a member of many international tarot organizations. She is a featured speaker at tarot conferences and symposia around the world.
Tarot conferences?
Yeah, that's end quote.
I want to go just for the people watching.
Yeah. So Greer is the author of 9 tarot books. Again, I do own one, so I shouldn't be talking too much shit. Her latest book dropped 10 years ago. Also out of touch.
So all her books are like how to use tarot cards, basically.
Mostly this one that I'm about to mention is Who Are You in the Tarot? And that was published in 2011. The book I own, again, is called 21 Ways to Read a Tarot Card, published in 2008. This will shock you even more, won the Cover Award for Best Divination Book. Who knew there are Addies for tarot?
Was it competing against the Bible?
That's a great question.
Because I feel like that one.
I have no idea.
I think that one would probably like win every year.
Jesus wins every time.
God damn it, not again.
Damn it, Jesus. It gets better.
You're just outshining all of us.
But it gets better. She also was presented with 2 tarot-specific awards at said whatever symposiums, 2007 International Tarot Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow.
And the 2006 Mercury Award from the Mary Redmond Foundation for, quote, excellence in communication in the metaphysical field, end quote.
So that makes me feel like you're winning an award for being like the best bullshit artist.
I can't deny that one on, yeah. Anyway, I am tending to agree with you on this, but all right, Greer is touted again in her bio as also an academic. According to said bio, she has an MA in English literature and was a faculty member at the New College of California in San Francisco for 11 years.
So she's good at creative storytelling.
Bingo. And I'm going to get to that a little later. And I really think that I'm assuming the English major, she was a creative writer. So therefore you can make up people's narratives. Exactly. You're way ahead of me, girl. So here's where we're going to veer really quickly right back to my woo-woo versus her academia experience. Again, you're going to love this. Oh my God, I can't wait. She is an archpriestess / hierophant in the Fellowship of Isis and is a self-proclaimed independent and professional tarot consultant. So what the fuck is the Fellowship of Isis, you ask?
Sounds like a terrorist organization.
Oh, fuck, it is. I just realized that. It is. It's an acronym for one. But Isis actually is, I believe, a goddess in Egypt. So I think that's what this one stands for. So I asked myself, what the fuck is this as well? Googled it. And once again, website ain't doing much to boost the reputation or credibility of those in the metaphysical wellness community. Like, honestly, y'all need to consult the ancient artist who we kind of discussed in my case earlier, or my history earlier rather, who made the original tarots. I mean, you saw how beautiful and intricate they are. Like, both sites are outdated, shitty ass WordPresses. I have a screenshot again for you. Not impressed. Yes, I'm being judgy. Bitches need a PR campaign. Like, what the fuck is that? It's yellow for those who cannot see, with a shitty sidebar, no nav bar, no logo, no nothing.
You know what that actually reminds me of is the recreation site the government has to book campsites.
Oh, it does.
And
yes.
And the only reason I say that because everything that tends to be run by the government doesn't tend to run very well.
Bingo. Well, clearly, same thing in metaphysical organizations, evidently. Y'all need some updating. Anyway. The Fellowship of Isis, beside its hideous website, is quoted as such. The Fellowship of Isis, or FOI, is a peaceful society with members worldwide from all cultures, races, and religions. It honors the divine feminine in all of her forms and the good in all faiths. The FOI manifesto provides its basic principles. It was founded on the vernal equinox of 1976 by Olivia Robertson and her brother, weird, we'll get into that, Lawrence Duran Robertson, and his wife, Pamela. Again, with the cousins, mother, brother, sister, like the founding of this, like y'all need some copy editing as well. I'm really annoyed. I just can't. You need help. Credibility if you want to and have any hope of streamlining people into believers. Anyway, continuing. We don't have time to get into the manifesto of the Fellowship of Isis today because we're covering Mary K. Greer. So back to her life and her renowned work as a tarot card reader and educator. From wikifamouspeople.com. Greer was born October 14th, which do you know what that means?
Sorry, September?
October 14th.
Oh, she's a Libra.
Yeah, girl. I'm going to get you in this real quick. October 14th, 1947. So making her Libra like me, as you figured out. Her primary income source on this site is apparently quoted as a writer, and her estimated net worth is about 100K to 100 million approximately as of 2019.
Wait, it ranges from 100,000 to $1 million?
Which I was questioning that as well. So this source seems sketchy as fuck at best, but I did wear my special Libra shirt today in honor of my fellow Librans. Yay. It's basically like I'm a hippie girl and I have a mouth of a sailor, heart of a lioness, or something of a hippie. Anyway, I can't read it upside down. Greer was heavily influenced by the writings of Eden Gray, Carl Jung, and Joseph Campbell. These three men all did psychological work on archetypes in the 1980s to 90s. Their work gave way to a new generation of tarotists, which also weirdly sounds like terrorist, yeah. Including Greer, who published her first book, The Tarot for Yourself, a workbook
or The Inward Journey in 1984. So these new wave of readers, including Greer, saw tarot as a more self-reflection tool for personal growth, more than a godly or divination practice, as we discussed in my case earlier. As things went forward, religious groups would paint tarot as the, quote, devil's work or tool, not a personal reflection tool.
So religions basically would hate on tarot cards.
Exactly.
Saying they were like Satan's tool.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So here's just another hideous design of another book, of her first book, Who Are You in the Tarot? Ooh. I can't. In addition to her 9 books, Greer is featured on countless metaphysical/spiritual podcasts. She even has had one of her own, couldn't tell because of the fucking website that was so horrible, that was embedded on there. But I stopped listening because, frankly, even I was bored. Okay? Someone who's interested in tarot, bored. Anywho.
So she doesn't know how to captivate an audience.
Not digitally, not personally, or auditorily. Correct. So anyway, that said, she's also often quoted on anything to do with tarot and reads in the form of cartomancy versus the oracle style, which we also discussed in my case. So the cartomancy, just to recall, focuses on one's own self-introspection and turning inward. Much of what the renowned psychologist Carl Jung studied, and how that, like, the psychology of tarot basically is what he studied. And here's a quote from Mary Kay in the same Rolling Stone article I used in my intro. Again, that title I love, Not Just Woo Woo, Why More People Are Turning to Tarot for Self-Help, from December 2020. And this is Mary Kay Greer being quoted in that article. Quote, Jung believed a person could use an intuitive method to understand, through tarot's reflecting the collective unconscious into a, quote, cloud of cognition, the meaning in a present prevailing condition, end quote. So Greer's creative inspiration from Jung can also be seen in the book Tarot and the Archetypal Journey, The Jungian Path from Darkness to Light. The book's actually fully written by Sally Nichols, but Greer wrote the foreword to that book. In the book's Amazon description, it says, this highly innovative work presents a piercing interpretation of the tarot in terms of Jungian psychology through the analogies into the humanities, mythology, and the graphic arts, which, as we discussed, not great in her realm. The significance of the cards is related to personal growth and what Jung termed individualization. The major arcana becomes a map of life, and the hero's journey becomes something that each individual can relate to in one's personal life.
I think it's funny, though, going back to religions hating tarot cards. If people are using tarot cards as a reflection tool, it's almost like some religions hate critical thinking.
Oh, 100%.
Or when you start to question things.
Exactly. And you know what that stems to? Our next week's case is cults, right? Most religions, I would argue, could be considered a cult because they don't want you to think for yourself or question. So back to Jung's concept of individualization. It's typically reserved for highly capitalist societies, which is why I was super surprised to learn that tarot rose in popularity as a divinization tool. I'm screwing that word up all over the place. Fortune-telling tool in Japan in the 2000s and 2010s. And I'm surprised because from my study abroad in Japan in 2019, I learned that the Japanese are actually all about the collective good, not the individual. So for example, when I went around to different agencies or a record company, a media company, a newspaper, everyone has to get everyone's opinion and agreement before they move on in making a decision around the table. So it could take a really long time.
That could be really frustrating.
To come to any creative decision or strategic decision, right? So yes, it's great that they're not all about the selfish individual, but also could take up, like, you know what I mean?
It's almost like one extreme to the next. Mm-hmm. It's like, let's meet in the middle. Do most of us agree? Okay, good. Let's move on.
Yeah, that's not how they usually run business in Japan, but which may explain why the rise of interest, because they were like, well, shit, I can't be an individual at work or in society. Let me try to find some individualization on my own. Anyway, that's just my opinion. With the boom of digital publishing, tarot grew worldwide, as we also discussed in my case, and so did the individuation mind. Tarot also became the avenue for self-expression, empowerment, and especially for people in marginalized communities like feminists or anyone in the LGBT community, plus community. Tarot actually became a way for these groups to seek inner peace, solace, and strength.
Greer also quotes Jung once again in the Rolling Stone article. Jung believed a person could use a, quote, intuitive method to understand through tarot's reflecting the collective unconscious into a cloud of cognition, meaning that you're going within you're using tarot to go within, essentially. And that was a really like psychological way to say that. But
yeah, basically you're just using it as a tool to reflect.
Exactly. So a contemporary of Greer's named Melinda Lee Holm sees it this way too. And she says, interacting with and learning the language of tarot can help us understand ourselves and each other. If we understand these universal things about ourselves, you recognize that everyone goes through these things, and that brings us to a common ground. It makes us more compassionate. FYI, Holmes is LA-based, also a high priestess and tarot practitioner who frequently works with music insiders. And her husband, back to last week's case, happens to be one of Paul McCartney's go-to DJ producers.
Wow, that's
Chris
cool.
Holmes. So I thought that was kind of cool. Little tie it back.
Yeah.
To wrap it all up, there's very little else known about Greer, her family, other than this very tiny ass footnote on her outdated website. This quote, I have a picture of it, I'll show you. This was my great grandmother, Alice Sutherstrathy, in Gretna, Louisiana in 1912. She had the site, knew some voodoo, and read cards and tea leaves for whoever needed her help. On the right is my great-grandmother and my grandmother and my mother in 1919 in front of my grandparents' house across from the Davy Crockett Firehouse in Gretna, Louisiana. So there's some cool old pics of her. The more healthy skeptical that I'm becoming and learning to become thanks to you, friend, Ames, I am starting to see in Greer's bio and anything about her background or childhood is likely intentionally vague, much like her styles of reading, allowing the querent or the person being read to decide their own narrative and their own story. And again, the moral of the story and her character, the only things that I think that she's actually guilty of is 1, shitty design and taste. Covered that. 2, writing fantastical fiction, right? As we said, because remember, she has an MA in English, which would allow her to create narratives. And I assume that, again, that English major involved creative writing. So while fantasy, believe it or not, isn't my go-to genre, or, if she's creative writing, she can easily make up very short narratives for others.
And probably narratives that could fit anyone's situation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But to my knowledge, she's never claimed to give those creative narratives to clients as malice, nor has she ever claimed to be a fortune teller or divining for anyone else.
Well, to me, it sounds like she just uses the tarot cards as a way for self-reflection and help others. It's almost like she's a therapist through the tarot cards.
That was so deep. Yeah, I agree. So really, Greer allows people the time, space, and the opportunity to reflect on their own lives through tarot. Exactly what you just said. And what's more divine than that?
Nice. I like it.
The bottom line, I think she's actually a decent human.
Okay, so we actually have a good person.
I think we might on our hands.
So do you like the book you own from her?
Yeah, I actually stopped reading it, I'd say just when I was finishing up my master's program last year. So I'm actually trying to get back into it so I can be more confident when I'm reading myself and others.
So in the book, she's basically teaching you, is it about the history of the tarot cards, or... I know there's like different suits.
Sure. Yeah, there's a little bit of history, but it's definitely more about how you as the reader can be empathetic and tune into the person coming to you. Like you said, like as a therapist, like really seeking help and answers or what have you. But she does it in a way, like I said, I think she's a good person, that you're being empathetic. You're not just trying to make shit up. I think she has good intentions is what my whole point is.
And she's a priestess?
Yeah.
Wow.
In terrorist organization named ISIS. No, I'm just kidding. The Church of ISIS. With that said, though, head on over to part 2 of this episode of tarot cards so I can read Amy's cards. That is our episode today, and I hope you all enjoyed and maybe find your own self-reflection someday, whether you believe or not. Like, what's better than like trying to better yourself in any way you can?
Exactly. That's why I can appreciate tarot cards.
I'm so glad you do.
Well, peace be witches.
No.
Thanks for listening. Please rate, and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your podcast. Check us out on Instagram or bewitchedbanter.com. Suggestions for the show? Email us at bewitchedbanter@gmail.com. Credits, music, Phantom Fun by Jonathan Boyle from premiumbeat.com. Podcast edited and produced by Krista Hins and Amy Holt.